Here we can call it to order. This is notice of the November 16, 2023 meeting of the Board of Examiners for Land Surveyors. Location has been noticed to the Land Surveyors website since August 18th, 2022. Additionally, this month's agenda has been posted on the website since November the 9th, 2023.
All right. Chair, then, thank you for calling that to order. We'll do a roll call then to establish quorum. Jay Kaufman. Gary Clark.
Here.
Justin Raines.
Here.
Kevin Martin. All right, Chair, we have quorum. Before we begin, if I may welcome our new member, Justin Raines. Welcome aboard. We're looking forward to your participation years ahead, and I know you've come well recommended and have quite the background, so I look forward to the contribution you'll make, and we appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate it. It's an honor to serve on this board and to follow in the steps of somebody given so much time to it as Jackie, who's here today. And I'll just hope not to mess it up.
I'm sure you'll do great. And in that vein, if it would please the chair and the board, I'd like to take that time to recognize, as requested not only by the board, but then our pleasure as the staff to recognize our two former board members who are present today. That's Jackie Dillahay and Tim Lingerfeld.
Yes.
All right, sounds great. All right, for your outstanding service, we'll do Tim first, and then Jackie, you'll be on deck. In order of, I guess, outgoing. Tim, we appreciate your service. It's been I know you put a lot of effort in that. I know what you guys do as far as the reviews, the subject matter expertise that you both lend to us regularly, and just being board oftentimes, and we appreciate that assistance and that service over the many years for both of you. But let me just read the plaque. Tim, go ahead and come on up, if you don't mind, to the podium. And the plaque says this. Board member recognition presented to Tim Lingerfeld. Our sincere appreciation for the many years of dedicated service and outstanding leadership in giving voice and vision for the past, present, and future. You have made an invaluable contribution to the Tennessee Board of Examiners for Land Surveyors. Sincerely, the board.
I just want to say a few words, if I may, Chairman's permission. I just want to the profession. He is certainly a good friend. I would call a true mentor over the years of the years that I've been able to serve on here. I came in here, I think Justin probably can relate to a little bit of it, kind of wide-eyed, ears open, not really sure that you're going the right way. Tim has been a true path maker for me. I think other surveyors in the state certainly has served not only the profession and the surveyors as well, but always kept paramount the protection of the public. I don't think anyone here could question his efforts, his true passion, desire, and love for the profession. And I just want to thank him. It is a small token for the effort that he's put forward, but certainly a large thank you from not only myself and the board here, but I think from the surveyors across the state would feel the same. Give you a handshake. Sure. Thank you.
All right. And then we got one more character to recognize. One, Jackie Dillahay. If you would come on up to the podium there. And the sentiment is the same for you, Jackie. I know you guys put in a lot of effort, a lot of work, and we certainly could not do this job without our board members. We desperately rely on your expertise, and each of you have give of yourselves tirelessly and without restraint. So we appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Again, one of the things I really enjoy about Jackie's time, not so much the effort that and lots of effort that he puts on the board, but one of the privileges of being on this board is the travel and acknowledgement and working with the NCAAS, and a part of that is travel. And of course, when you get to travel, you kind of hang out together because you're familiar with each other, and I include Tim on this as well, and you get to see some great experiences. We've seen a lot of ball games, been to a lot of events, and Jackie has certainly been a vital part of just my memories, fond memories of not only the time on the board, but the experiences, which really is the most valuable part of this board, is the experience and the camaraderie of getting together. And even though we may be surveyors from different parts of the state, we still have the same passions and desires to serve the public as well. And I just want to thank Jackie for his time here. And all your Thanks so much.
From what I understand, gentlemen, you we're going to be hanging around a little while, so if that's okay, we'll just take those pictures and then sort of get those circulated at the end of the meeting then. And thank you for coming out. A part of that travel is the distance. I know, Tim, yourself, you drive, nearly 4 hours? So, yeah, that's a haul. And you were doing that for years, so thank you all. Okay, Chair, it looks like we're ready then for the agenda.
Okay. Have the agenda for us. Do we have any changes or additions to that?
No changes or revisions to the agenda. I move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the agenda is approved as we have it. Which brings us to the minutes, which I believe we have some.
Those corrections are before you. So, yep, that's that updated version, and that's on your iPads. No.
Any comments on the revisions to the minutes?
No comments, changes. I move to approve as revised.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. They are approved as amended. And so that takes us to the professional society report.
All right, is Mr. Cleveland on the line, or a representative from TAPS?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Definitely appreciate the opportunity to address the board, and as always, we appreciate the opportunity to attend virtually. It sure is helpful. We definitely want to take a moment and recognize both Tim and Jackie and thank them for their service on the board. It's a labor of love for sure, and we definitely appreciate their contributions to our profession for that. As far as the TAP Society goes, we are working on our spring conference. That's for those of you who have been a part of that in the past. It's a large undertaking and working hard to try to build off of the successful conference we had in the spring and continue that on. We are also presenting with the renewals coming up. We are presenting a Zoom meeting on December the 19th. This year to give one last opportunity for surveyors to get their minimum standards and ethics PDHs prior to the renewal period closing. At the last meeting, I briefly talked about the association looking into some possible proposed legislation for the addressing the current licensing laws. And we've come up with some proposed changes, and we discussed that at the September TAPS Board of Directors meeting. We passed that along to the chapters for review and comments, and we are hoping to have those comments back by our December meeting. The next TAPS meeting is December the 2nd. We hope to discuss the topic a little bit further at that meeting and decide on how we want to proceed with that. So we'll definitely keep the Board of Examiners abreast of those discussions and keep everybody in the loop what's going on with that. We have also been made aware of, I don't know, we've kind of gotten a hint that the Farm Bureau is going to be pursuing that owner notification legislation that was withdrawn in the spring legislative session. So we're rather concerned about that, and we just found out about it a couple of days ago, and definitely we'll be talking about that at the December meeting. We'll definitely keep everybody abreast of that development. So at this time, that's pretty much all we've got going on.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Quick question, Jimmy. You still there?
Yes, sir.
Any update you can give us on the conference coming up in March? Not too far away.
It's not. It's going to be here before we know it, especially with the holiday season quickly approaching. To my knowledge, we'll get some final things. Typically at the December meeting, we kind of finalize everything prior to the brochures going to print. My understanding is we're trying to have a couple of different tracks A year or so ago, we had a last minute cancellation with our keynote speaker due to a health issue. So we're trying to line up a couple of different tracks to better accommodate a situation like that. So my understanding is there'll be, I think, 2, maybe 3 tracks on that, and then we'll be in that in December. So be looking for that information to go out probably right around the first of the year.
I did. The TAPS has been submitted.
Sorry, Jay, missed you there on that. Yeah.
Just wanted to say, reiterate, say thank you to TAPS for getting those applications in for PDH requests for the conference in a timely fashion. Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, and I guess we move to the education report, which I believe everyone has a copy of.
Yes, sir. There's we've got recommendations for approval for all but the last 2, the Thompson courses, the databases, and GPS rules. Jay, would you like to make any comments on those last 2? We don't have a recommendation on those yet.
Sure. Yeah, I will. These came by email, like all do, for review, and I did have some items that I wanted to discuss with the other board members here on these 2 items before we make a decision as to whether they're approved or not, and for how many PDHs. And in addition, I did have discussions with the presenter to answer a few questions the other day. So I've had some communication back and forth. At the end of the day, my personal recommendation on these was for the GPS rules. The applicant had requested 2 PDHs on these, and I suggest 1. And on the second one, entitled databases, the applicant had requested 4 PDHs, and my suggestion was 0. Quite honestly, I did not feel it was adequate. But I'm gonna kind of leave that and let you all discuss. I hope that you've had an opportunity to discuss the materials that he provided, and then I can kind of follow up on that. So.
And keep in mind too, if you during the discussion, if you find that you need more time for deliberation and circle back, we can do that too. It's not like we have to do it at this moment right now, So if you need more information, and we can collect that and go back to him and get that, whatever. So just as you take that time.
Just for a little additional information, as a part of the process when I first reviewed it, I did request additional information on these just because I didn't feel it was adequate what was provided. Philip was very quick in getting that to me. What I don't know is whether the other members were privy to that same information. If they weren't, then you're missing some information, and I would not expect you to have an answer today. But if you were, then I'd certainly open the floor for discussion on it.
I think what I received was pretty minimal. I don't know that I had anything beyond what you'd first said onto it, so I don't know that I have the information I need to really discuss it, unless you want to talk about any discussions you had with the presenter.
Sure, yeah. If y'all don't have anything to add to it, Justin, I don't know if you were privy to the information or not. You remember?
Yeah, I was sent the information, and I honestly had a little trouble following the course. Okay. It seemed pretty unorganized and extremely basic. Both courses actually. So I think I'm kind of along the same lines that where you're going with it is. I'm at this moment, I didn't even see an hour's worth of content in either course.
Okay, Gary, were you up to speed on the
same point then? Because I was thinking that must have been something else that I didn't. But I did read the same thing Justin came up with. It was hard to follow, and I didn't really see that really added anything to the original request. Okay, just to kind of give a brief narrative of my discussions and interactions with the gentleman and about the content of these courses. I'll separate them one by one. The GPS rules, he was requesting 2. He was applying for credit toward minimum standards, which typically is a 1-hour course. He was requesting 2, and it did not cover the broad spectrum of all that's contained in 08-2003, the minimum standards. Rather, he isolated it down to one specific rule, the GPS rule, which is valuable in its content. But I had trouble in that the breadth of it. There's 11 sections to 08-2003, and he was concentrating on 1. We typically give 1 credit for the courses that cover the entire thing, and here he is just isolating, not even a tenth of it.
So that's why I kind of was like, look, two is a bit much here. And I believe even the original application said that he was applying toward ethics as well. So I had to kind of cut that part out as well. So, while I'm not saying 0 credit here, I do think it's worthy of 1 credit hour. I do. It's valuable content. But I had trouble quantifying the full 2 PDHs. So that was my justification on the first one. The second one, entitled databases, with the information that was provided, was very, very crude. I mean, we're talking like Excel 101 type course. And I asked the applicant, how can you justify this directly toward the profession of surveying? I'm talking about capital P, profession of surveying. And I got the answers that I expected. He's very, very kind, very courteous, very respectful in his answers. But essentially it became down to a straight, 5 or 10 column database with a project number and an address and a contact name and, your basic information that you would expect. And that was about it. I mean, quite honestly, the point I tried to make across to the gentleman was, I'm trying to keep the standards of professional development hours with the emphasis on professional. And I just didn't think that the quality of, or the value of the content that he was trying to pass across toward the profession of surveying just didn't meet the mark. And I explained that to him, and we kind of agreed to disagree at the end of the day. And quite honestly, I explained to him, I like, look, there's 3 members here on the board, and the other 2 can overrule me, so there's still a chance. And he seemed to agree with that, and we said, basically just said goodbye to each other, and that was about the end of the conversation, quite honestly. So I'm kind of leaving it in the hands of the other 2, quite honestly, and let them, come up with their rationale. If you choose to approve both as he applied, I'm good with it. If you want to, negotiate it elsewhere, I'll certainly go to the purview of the board.
Were you recommending just 1 hour on the GPS rules?
I did, yes. There is still some value in his content, but I just didn't think the quantity of 2 hours was.
Did he have 2 hours worth of contact in his proposal?
I don't recall that it was a full 2 hours. He did provide some feedback responses from when he had presented the course before, all obviously very positive, because that's what you're going to submit. And part of his argument was, look, I can go up here and talk about this particular topic for more than an hour. And well, I agreed, sure, I can go up and talk about a brick for 2 hours if you want me to, but I'm trying to belittle the gentleman. He's very respectful. But I just think the quantity in terms of an hour is adequate for 1 PDHs.
Okay. And the only way I'm going with that is I did just finish the standards of practice training for 2 other states myself, and in both cases, the actual seminar was many hours more than the required that you would take for just the standards of practice, and the parts of the standards of practice was just embedded in the overall discussion. So it's the way actually both of them went about it. And it didn't cover the entire breadth of the statute in either case. Mm-hmm. But, we got the 1 hour that counted fulfilled the required minimum standards from it, and then the rest of it was just general approved PDHs on that. This course satisfied in that way, where it only, in your thoughts, would it satisfy the 1 hour for standards practice in its present form, and then just the other hour, if it's a 2 hour course, is just general PDHs?
Quite honestly, in the list of content that he provided, I think it could have been adequately covered in an hour. I don't know. A lot of that is dictated by the students taking the course and the questions they have, whether it's, everybody's sitting on their hands or everybody's raising hands answering questions. It can go on for 2 hours. You can make any conversation 2 hours. But honestly, I think the content of the material that was provided and the subject matter that's provided can adequately be covered in 1 hour.
Well, and that's where I was leaning as well. Just since you had talked to him, I was curious if you'd had anything else to add to it. So I tend to agree with you that the database didn't really count for anything toward the profession, and the course for GPS rules just was.
That feels like we're moving close to a motion, perhaps. So if someone would like to make that motion, and whatever that recommendation is, if that's the recommendation and that turns to the motion, then we can take it off from there. And we can still have discussion afterwards if we need that.
Certainly accept the motion.
I'll make that motion. Make a motion for approval of the GPS rules course submitted for 1 PDH hour. And following that motion for not approving, the database course as submitted.
And Jay, if you don't mind, and then the other recommendations would be approval. That's sort of like a consent agenda that's on the record. So we can just do it all in one.
Incorporate it all into that same motion, approval for all the other courses as listed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very well. So we've passed beyond that. So it brings us to the director's report.
All right. This will be for informational purposes only, as you know. I'll probably spend a little bit more time here just for the benefit of our new member, just to touch on some of those high points. But let me get there myself. That'd probably be useful, wouldn't it? Okay. But we're going to go through the budget, and this at the end of the year, typically our end of the year revenues for each of the prior fiscal years comes in. That's the first page. You won't get that every single meeting. That's just after we have those totals at the end of the fiscal year. Then we compare that with year end over end. The next one is our trend, which you will get every board meeting, which is the current fiscal year we're in and what that trend looks like, and what in essence is a P&L chart. Profits, is revenue, losses, expenditures, deficit or surplus.
Very familiar.
Yep. As a business owner and CEO, I knew I'd be talking your language. So, and that's kind of what what that revenue is, or the reserve balance. That first sheet in front of us, it's a ledger, a high level sort of ledger, and those same totals you'll notice are in our trending analysis on that second page. And so this one's a little inverted. It does one thing I do like about the reserve snapshot is you get a list of those accounts. And you can see those sort of itemized, travel, printing, communications, repairs, awards, indemnities, motor vehicle operation, and all the rest. So we're going to talk about in this one, they've inverted, they put the expenditures up top. You'll look at the total expenditures about 2/3 of the way down, we're 179. And then you'll have the revenue. Net revenue is very low. It's 31,000, and that's only because we were not in a renewal year. As you know, we have renewal years. Everything's synced up, so that'll look quite differently since we're in a renewal year. Come the next couple months, we'll see those revenues flow in, and that's also why you'll see the fiscal year balance. Prior years, you've got surpluses and deficits. You can track that and trace that all along those renewal years, and that's just below that net revenue. About 4 rows up from the bottom, that fiscal year balance, you're watching that from year after year, deficit or surplus tracking along the renewal year, which makes sense. That's when your money's coming in as your revenue. So your operating expenses won't change that much, but revenue will. So as you can see, we're right about on par. If you look at those prior years, look at fiscal year 1920 and 21-22, 388,000. Then fiscal year at the very bottom, 2021, and 22-23, the current, you're looking at, so it's pretty steady. There's not a whole lot of disruption there along the way. So if we'll move into the next one, the trending analysis for this fiscal year. Let's get there, and you'll note that we're in deficit. But that's going to change since the renewal period opened up November 1st. I will give you one little data point. The renewal period, it opened up at 11/1, so we've only been in it for a couple weeks, and that'll close at the end of this year. Since close of business yesterday, I pulled the renewals just to get an idea where we're at, in those 2 weeks, and we've got 248 renewals come through. Out of 1121 active licensees. So that's roughly 22% of the total licensing pool in 2 weeks. So, I mean, they're using the new system. They're doing fine, and they're getting those renewals in, and Phil's getting them to me. I know because I see them in my inbox, and so I know Phil. We're getting our money's worth out of Phil the last couple of weeks. To
follow up on that, have those initial opening hiccups kind of been resolved, and we're flowing smoothly now?
They were, with anything, you have an influx. That's part of the problem too, and information too. It's just helpful. That's the reason why I sent out that MyEMA notice to all of our licensees with instructions for onboarding when the new system. And we suspect, and everyone's doing that. That's we have. Fortunately, I prefer just to rip the Band-Aid off, and I love the fact that we're synced up on a renewal period because we can just do it all at once. And then these guys will be set up for the next renewal period, and we won't sort of be working through that piece. But reg access, we've only had it for a few months, and we're watching all the other boards, and they have some of the same hiccups. So it's not, but we iron those out pretty smoothly. And I mean, obviously, we got 22% of our licensee pool done, so everything's fine.
I know I received a letter, like paper letter in the mail for renewal, which I would expect. I assume that was sent to every registrant. Is that right?
That's correct. We still send those out. But, if we're going to have a big push like this or maybe announcement, we try to use those sparingly. We don't want to spam people's folders because then, too much information, they're not even reading it anymore. You sort of lose the effect that return on investment diminishes if you're doing that. And so we selectively choose those to send those out. Like, A&E, they don't allow carryover hours anymore due to a rule change. That's a big deal, especially if you're counting on it. So we sent that one out, renewal period when it's synced up and everyone's going through it at once. And we have a new system, and those things kind of dovetail together. We're going to send out an email for that too, just to make sure those redundancies in place to get that done and across the board.
So at some point, every registrant was either physically hard copy mailed or emailed or both, I assume, about the renewal.
They were, and okay. Now the address on file, that's their responsibility.
Right.
I don't have a crystal ball, so we
send it. Right. Supposed to update that.
So we'll send it to what they have on file, and then same with their email for this renewal period. And typically we have a luxury of sending an email, which I'll probably as a standard practice do that, just because I think we can do that, and all that's done it all at once, so why not do it? So I'll probably just do that in the future. But yeah.
Will there be a second reminder from the board sent out either by paper or by email, or is pretty much once is enough?
Yeah, I mean they've got two in there, and by now they should be pretty dialed in. The only folks I would worry about are those new licensees.
Right.
I mean, folks that have been doing that are on their first or second, third cycle, it's not like it's January 23rd or something. It's that's the end of the year. It's a pretty hard date. That'd be a hard one to miss.
Ultimately, it's the registrant's responsibility at the end of the day. So emails, hard copies, regardless, still their responsibility.
Carrier pigeon, whatever, but at some point they got to get it done. Yeah.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah. So just didn't mean to divert necessarily, but just get you back to this one. Just at the very top, I'll just run through those totals right quick, Mr. Rain, so you got an idea of what we're talking about. Of course, license agreement, that's self-explanatory. Case revenue, that's anytime we assess a penalty due to an agreed citation. Discipline comes before us, a citation is issued. They pay that citation, that would show up there. State reg fee. The reason why it's in brackets as a reduction, even though in the revenue is kind of odd. It's an accounting thing. I talked to the guys and said, hey, wouldn't that be an expense? You know what I mean? You got revenue, but it's got brackets. I mean, to me, it seems like you have to go in below, but they said it's a workaround because it's an interagency sort of, well, we print our licensees, and I think F&A, they charge us like $5 per license to print that. But in their mind, it's not a true expense that falls under Edison, so they just itemize it there. Maybe the guy just gave up and decided it needed its own column, so he dropped it there, and that was the end of it. But that's not going to be real high. You're going that's going to be all at once. As you can see there, you got 30, 50, and 40. So you had 8 last month or that final month in September. We're going to have a lot more, as they send those renewals out. So the below Edison expenses. Edison is basically our online ledger, payroll, the whole thing, accounts payable. It all goes through Edison. That's what that is. So if we were to send you on a trip, reimburse you for travel, that's through Edison. Any line expenses that we paid that our ledger that comes through Edison. Salary benefits, that's just self-explanatory. As you can see, those pretty low. We haven't apportioned much in that regard as far as staffing support. That would be administrative staff. Technology, core, those type of things. The system we're using now, Reg Access, would be there. Other, that typically could be those miscellaneous things that doesn't fit nice and neat into sort of a ledger point or a line item in Edison. But what I do is I just kind of keep an eye on those for any irregularities and then talk to the accountant about that and get those entries should that. But those are going to be pretty consistent. You're going to see somewhere $500 to a couple $1,000. And anytime I've ever looked at it, it's always like, core expense that was sort of itemized in such a way it doesn't fit neatly in technology, so I need to go there. It's those type of things. Nothing to write home about. Administrative cost backs. That has to do with it's basically shared expenses across programs. So ours is going to be less than other folks. It's basically we share this building with 26 other boards, and so we all have to share that expense. Landlines and software and computers and rent, all that, water. It's like we got 26 roommates, so we're all splitting the cost. That's the fridge. The administrative cost backs is sort of that ledger on the fridge. And then sometimes too, administrative cost specs you will see mirrors the Edison expenses, salary, benefits, technology, other. And and basically it's just our shared expenses that would fall underneath those same said ledgers up under Edison, except for shared expenses. So you get down to legal cost specs. That's our hourly billable rate. So anytime I talk to Stuart or Erica, I don't try to go on too much about that, because that's a billable hour. I mean, that we're on the clock. So anytime we employ their services, that's what that is. And I'm kidding about that. I talk to them all the time, and that's probably why it's at 8,000. We probably cut that in half. If I could narrow that down a little bit.
A Red Bull for you.
So that's what that is. That's a billable hour, and that will go proportionally. Will increase if we got rulemaking hearings, or if we got to take Erica or Stuart up to the Hill, or if they're traveling for us as well. That's their time, so we're paying for that.
Along those lines, I did notice on the front page of the budget that the cost back for legal for this year, fiscal year 22-23, was almost double of what it had been the 3 previous years.
No.
So I took that as we're paying our legal staff very well.
Well,
deservedly so.
So there's a lot that go into that. Sometimes it's just reallocation. I had one board. I'll give you an example. I had a board in a former role that we never really quite allocated the resources properly. And see, you got to keep in mind too that property boards, we've got 6 programs. And so I make those divisions and those allocations, whereas it's pretty clean and easy when you've got one board, because then 100% of that administrative cost specs goes to that board, amongst staff, because your staff, if I was Motor V, for example, and that was the only board I had, that 100% of salary is going to be Motor V, whereas if I've got 6 boards, then I can allocate that percentages how I please based on what and it's not like a exact science, so we had one board in a former one that didn't have hardly any salary expenses. And we spent a lot of time on that. And so at that point I knew I had to make a reallocation at that point. And then they saw a dramatic increase in their expenses for salaries at that time. And so that could be some of it too, so it's, there's a lot that goes into the cake, as you know. Investigations, we send an expert out to the field. That's what that is. Then centralized complaints, customer service. That's our call center and complaint center. Like I mentioned, you guys, when folks would see you on the website and they at times will come and approach you, then you guys have always done a really good job of directing them back to complaints. Well, that's the center that receives that complaint, processes that complaint, forwards that to Erica for her review. And then we get a charge for that, so it's shared expense.
Noticeable spike there in September on those 2 centralized complaints customer service center. Double on the service center, and
that's an easy one.
3 or 4
Reg access, launch of Reg access.
Okay.
So
that's what it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So every all has a story. They say follow the money, right? And you can. Okay. So I didn't see anything outside the ordinary there. As you can see, all 3 months, those totals are pretty much tracking in line with one another. So there's, unless there's any questions, then I think we can move on to the next piece. Let's see. Let me get mine out. All right. Next item is the NCWS Southern Zone meeting of 2024. They need to have. They needed me to reach out to them. I believe it was by January 5th with who our funded delegates were going to be. So we're not going to have a meeting before January 5th. This is the one before January 5th. So I wanted to make sure to put that on the agenda and get a slate of approvals. And even if you're, Mr. Raines, I don't know what your schedule looks like, but or any of the others, if you don't think you can make it, but this isn't a hardcore commitment. As we get closer, there's some thresholds that we meet as we get closer that sort of becomes the point of no return. But right now this is an indication of interest. and a desire to go is really what we're talking about. But we just have to have it approved, formally. But that's completely funded by NCEES. You'll once approved here, we create the memo, route it, get it approved by all the authorities, which that won't be any problem. And then NCEES, they take care of the rest. You'll be in touch with them, and then they'll take care of the flight, the hotel, and the whole deal. So the Southern Zone meeting, National Council of Examiners for Engineering and Surveying, NCEES, as affectionately known. Their Southern Zone meeting is in Asheville, North Carolina. So just across the border, and April 4th through 6th. And so we just need to vote to approve the travel for you three. In that regard.
Take a motion for that.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
I assume it's for the 3 members here.
3 members, yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
I'll submit that indication of interest to them, and then they'll reach out to you as they get those dates, because they'll give you a tentative agenda and the whole bar. So you guys, of course, know, but for Mr. Raines, they'll reach out to you. Hey, looks like our next item is public comment period related to items on the agenda. As you know, this is something that is required now by law. So, this board and many of our boards, most all of our boards, welcome comments, and of course, certainly, all of our meetings are attended by the public, open to the public, and we welcome comments by the public. But this is just their way to formalize that. So you'll see this on your agenda going forward, right before the legal report. So what I'll do is I'm going to take a look at the sign-in sheet. I'll ask anybody that has not signed in to do so, and then also turn to our online folks as well to see if there's anyone there. And while I do that, Alex, if you could just anyone online, if you're interested in making a public comment to the board, just enter that in the chat box and just sort of virtually sign in with Alex, and she'll let me know that you want to speak. Looks like we've got 2 that have signed in, J. Eddie Campbell and Tim Lingerfeld. Are there any others? All right. Seeing none. All right. Didn't look like Jackie had that burning desire, so it looks like there'll just be 2 of us. So first of all, we'll take Mr. Campbell. And while Mr. Campbell's coming to the podium, let me just sort of set that up. He'll probably want to, and thank you for reaching out prior to as well with the information. Number 6 on your iPads was a case study job description that he provided that he may reference, and so I wanted to have that in front of you as well. And again, if it gets to the point where you can't necessarily, as in your deliberations, you realize you need more information, more time, all that, we don't have to come to a point of decision. Typically, we try to prepare beforehand to make sure you have all the resources you need. So if you get to that point, not saying you will, but if you get to that point, let us know. Then we'll collect that information, get that back to you, and then we'll get a timely response to Mr. Campbell, our education provider. And thank you for coming in. We appreciate that, sir. Please.
I could just real quick, I just want to make sure, is based on the presentations that are made here in the public comments, is the board allowed to take action on those today?
You could, because especially with this one, because it's related to the education report, which you did approve. So if there was something that required action, you could, since that was noticed as a part of the education report. It'd just be an extension of that. Yep.
Only comment I might have is just I appreciate y'all doing what you do, and I'm really just came to field any questions that may have arisen about my courses that I'm planning to put on the workshop in Mont Eagle. If there's not any questions about that, then I guess I don't have much to say.
Do you have any questions about your case study or anything that's?
I'd like to get the board's opinion on that. I feel like that's that job description would be a violation of laws and rules, and I'm doing on the morning session, I'm doing a course called What Does It Mean to Be a Tennessee RLS? And that's ethics, professionalism, and the standards of practice. And, as you know, the best way to get that across is to give case examples of good behavior and bad behavior. So I wanted to get a feel for that one, because that's a lot of these are fictitious examples that you give at these case studies, but this is a real world example from a Tennessee job description. So
I could, first of all, you're kind of jumping behind yourself here in a sense that you've already been approved. So
I didn't realize
just
that till I
giving you
got
the
here.
out, just saying.
Yeah.
But to refer, I think you made reference to another one perhaps that is not on our list here that hasn't been approved, a case study about a job description of some sort. I don't know that I just don't have that material in front of me at the moment.
It's number 6 on your iPad. I just added, it was a late arrival, so that's why.
Okay.
But yeah, it's on your iPad. Definitely.
I may request just a little extension on time to allow that to get sent to us by email, adequate time to study it, check resources, et cetera, like we do with standard courses. Philip is always so good about getting those to us so quickly. I can't imagine more than a week turnaround, to allow us time to adequately do that. So I just kind of want to temper down a little bit, perhaps the anticipation of getting that one approved today. I just kind of want to, have adequate time to study it and give you an adequate response.
Now, this case study, this job description is an example that I plan to present as part of one of those courses that have been approved.
I got you. Okay.
I have a
My
number
bad.
of
My bad.
examples, case study examples, and this is just one.
Okay. I misunderstood thinking this was a new course you were looking for.
No.
I apologize.
It's a course that's already been approved, but this is just a case study that I wanted to get your views on it so that I could, because part of this, I'm going to attempt to make this current, and I attend a lot of the meetings, and I watch the ones that I don't attend, and I rewatch the ones that I do attend, and I'm trying to get across what the board is acting on real time in 2023. What kind of issues did the board take action on, so that I can give that information to my audience that may not be at the meetings or watching or rewatching.
Okay. I don't know that we could provide that to you right here, right now. Rather, I think probably a request to admin could probably summarize that best for you. So
absolutely.
Other than that, I personally don't have any questions on the courses that have been approved. I'll defer to the other members here.
I guess my only question on this case study, you went to just exactly what is your question about this? Because this is the first time we've seen it too. That might.
But just is it bad behavior on the part of the firm that published that job description? I feel like it probably is. I feel like it violates some TCA and some rules. But I just wanted to get your opinion on that before I roll that out and present that as a problematic job description in Tennessee.
Is your question here where it looks to me like they're describing the job description of the PLS, who's called senior surveyor, and that he's actually under the drafting department manager.
Non-registrant.
Is a non-registered.
Mm-hmm.
No
rush.
Well, no, that helps. I was just trying to look where you were going with that. I see your thought on that. I'd like to think about that and come up with a more thoughtful response to it.
And Stuart makes a good point too, Riverside Bar there for a second. Is this one thing I just caught in your comments, is this a current, is this out there right now? Is this?
Yes,
okay.
I believe so.
Okay. Well, in that case, if we may be getting it could end up being a complaint. And
it could very well be.
And if that's the case, then that's a whole different sort of route or process.
Of course, I understand the way you're presenting it right now, whereas this may actually be taken for something you've seen. You're presenting it more as this is a fictitious situation for discussion with your presentation you're doing to your class to let people kick around and see what they think about it. So
it could very well evolve into something else, but I want to make sure I'm not missing something. I feel like it is.
Yeah, that was another thing too. Is only problem with making a determination about your thoughts about this case example is if it ends up being a complaint, then you've got a conflict. Then at that point, you wouldn't be able to rule on that. All three of you, everyone would be recused. So then the board itself, wouldn't be able to process that complaint. So that's the only, I guess, we might have some cross contamination. If it ends up being a complaint. If this was not a current one, then you could dive into it if it was or if it was in another jurisdiction for which we have no jurisdiction or any governing regulatory sort of authority over, then that would be different as well. Then the board could lend some of their expertise in that regard and give, again, their opinions individually, separately, but not as a board, but as subject matter experts, they could do that,
I see where you're going with that. Yeah, that's a good point. Whereas Yeah, any one of us would be able to give you an individual opinion of just how we feel about it. But as a group right here, it takes on a different connotation. Now it becomes more official, and we don't really need to get ahead of what could be a complaint. Or even if it was something similar to this as a complaint, it could be some cross contamination. So,
Yeah, because if you make basically a determination outside the complaints process, at that point you'd have to recuse yourself and wouldn't be able to participate in the complaint. So that's the only.
I see.
Yeah.
this would be a better discussion for you just to have with Gary as opposed to
Yeah,
the
I think
board.
so. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can do that. I'm open to that.
Or another case study that's outside this jurisdiction of this board. So since it's just really a practical example, that would be helpful. Something like that. Mhm.
We'll work on it.
All right.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. All right.
You take a break before Tim starts, or
I think if we'll you know what, let's be adventuresome. Let's get them started, and we'll see where it kind of goes from there. Tim, come on.
I mean, I've known Tim a long time. I wouldn't be embarrassed to interrupt him.
I've got it all.
3 minutes.
Yeah, okay.
That was encouraging.
3 minutes max.
Single space, small font.
See, I knew I should have given my disclaimer. They tell us that we're supposed to give all of a public comment section limited to about 3 to 4 minutes. Now I'm kicking myself now for that. Go ahead, Tim.
Welcome, Mr. Leader.
Well, I don't think no introduction is necessary, but I will give a little cliff notes for our new member, Mr. Raines. Just a couple of things. I was involved in writing in the writing of the current TS examination that is currently being given to applicants. I have been involved with NCAAS with the examinations through them since 2005. FSPS cut scores, been on the FS exam writing committee, have questions on the current FS exam that I've written. I'm currently on the PS exam committee, still writing questions. I have, I think, a couple on there. I am currently serving on a surveying and mapping science task force for NCAAS as an emeritus from this board. So just that a little bit of history relative to, I'm not going to say my knowledge, my background of examinations and kind of what goes with it. The document that I provided for you poses a question, and the information that I'm going to present basically supports that. And I just want to, since I, as Mr. Glenn said, since I spent the time and effort getting here today, I might as well do something. So this is what I'm going to do. My question is, does our current licensing law create an impediment to licensure in our state, or does the Board of Examiners implementation create the impediment? All right, where I'm coming from, licensure is centered around what we call a three-legged stool, which is education, experience, and examination. Okay? As our current law is written, which is in 62-18-109, it creates pathways. There's 5 principal pathways that an individual can become licensed. Those pathways are very structured as far as you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this, and the end result, when you've completed everything and passed the final examination, you become a licensed land surveyor in the state of Tennessee. So where we begin to deviate, and that's part of what I want to talk about, is NCAAS several years ago asked their jurisdictional boards to consider decoupling or removing some of those ties between that structured ladder. And we started with the FS examination. And this board approved that decoupling. So in other words, you don't have to have your 4-year degree before you can actually sit for the FS exam. Now, if you have a high school education, you can actually come out and sit for the FS exam with no post-high school education. And if you're fortunate and can pass it, that's fine. Another area that this board has also reached out is with college courses. For example, if you have someone that has a 4-year degree, let's say in an engineering or a related science, they may have some coursework in that degree that would fall within the list that our board uses to substantiate surveying credit hours towards the pathways in our law. So this within itself is a slight deviation, and the mindset behind that was they've already taken it once. Why should we make them take it again? Just simply because it's post degree. So, and I think that was very appropriate. So I think we got one more thing that might be an impediment, and that's the experience. Okay. The way I like to look at the three-legged stool, we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago in Denver on this task force, and this was a topic of discussion. The three-legged stool now, because of decoupling and other things, really should be considered in a pot or a bowl, like you were making a cake. And all three components, all three legs are a part of that. So in looking at that, that would allow if the board so saw fit, that would allow the board to look at experience slightly different than they do now. I give an example in here. I speak to an applicant that's 55 years old with 25 years surveying experience and no license. Okay, that applicant decides that they want to take the FS examination. Well, that's no problem. They go take the examination, then they apply back to the board. Well, the typical routine for that particular applicant now is for them to have the proper amount of experience post-FS, and in this particular example, it would be a high school or the fifth path, and they would have to have 6 years of additional experience beyond their FS passing plus 12 college course hours in surveying. That's what our law says. So now you're looking at an individual that's 55 when they pass the exam. Now they're going to be 62 getting their license. Okay? And that follows the path. So, but I think, and that's why I wanted to make sure and give Erica a copy of this also, was I think that the board has the ability to embrace that experience. As you all know, with individuals that have worked for you and came up the ranks, as they say, and have worked, there's beginning experience and then there's more advanced experience, et cetera, and at some point in time, they're now, crew chief, some kind of survey manager, et cetera. So those levels of experience actually fit into the mold of the law, but it's how we implement that. For example, let's just go back to our 55-year-old here again. Let's assume, for discussion purposes, he has 19 years of the 25 that is quality, that is determined as quality responsible charge surveying experience with one or more firms under licensee. If that was the case, he passes his FS. He then, if the board looked at it that way, in this pot I'm talking about, he then would be able to go ahead and take his PS and his TS because he would have the qualifying experience. And clearly this is a case-by-case example. And that's where understanding what that level of experience should be by our law is necessary for the board as you review your applications. So the point here for that individual is instead of being 62 and licensed and virtually at retirement per se, he's now 55 or 56 and he's licensed if he was successful, passing the exams and so forth, and he has another X number of years to be very productive either for himself or his firm he works with, etc. And it's my opinion, and only my opinion, that if you did look at all three of these legs in that bowl and you would analyze them in that manner, then we would be able to promote more individuals to the potential of licensing. And obviously, we're all very well aware of the demographics and so forth and so on. I did mention in here about the NCAAS exam. It's quite awakening. The average age for an applicant passing the FS is 34.3 years. Okay, I think you get out of college about 22 or 23, maybe even 24 if you go on that route. Average PS exam is 38.1 because it's that experience differential. For example, if it was our BS degree, it's 2 years. So if the applicant passes, it's 2 years. Now, I will say one thing about those numbers. You have to realize that those numbers really don't start until about age 20, 21. So, I mean, that's the base. In other words, it's not 34 starting from zero. It's really, 21, 22 when they could actually be involved. So those numbers are a little bit inflated because of that very fact right there. But they still are what they are. So, I mean, if an individual, he or she, is passing the FS exam at 38 years old, they still got some kind of jurisdictional exam or some other pathway to look at. So another thing that I think would be good is the consideration of decoupling the PS exam. Bless you.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. And the reason I say that is if the board has no interest in using what I call the Kentucky model, where Kentucky licensed people after they pass the PS exam, then they could decouple the PS exam. Again, we're still in this bowl. I cannot get my license until I pass the FS, the PS, and I have the appropriate education and the appropriate experience. So one of the impediments for an individual that is not, I'm going to say non-degreed, and it may very well be for the degreed individual as well, is the timing for taking the exams. If you take both exams, FS and PS, are BS supported. Okay, more so the FS than the PS. PS is more practical supported. But oftentimes, passing the PS is challenging enough for the applicant that is out of school X number of years, older, etc., and then having to wait additional time after that first challenge to get to the second challenge, and the third challenge in our case, which is the TS, sometimes is daunting. Another reason for decoupling the PS is it puts people in our pipeline quicker. For example, if you have an individual that qualifies, that passes the FS and it's decoupled, and they step up and take that PS, now you've got an individual that has a much larger investment. With an individual with the FS, they can walk away. They can walk away and go do something else, potentially. Hopefully they won't. But if that individual has the FS and PS, chances are we probably got them. And that's what we want. We want those people. So that's part of where all this discussion centers around is, can the board or will the board look at that three-legged stool, putting it in a bowl and saying, we've got everything we need here to make sure that this individual is worthy of taking the examinations, passing them to become licensed. And if that's the case, we just simply need to look at it just a little bit different, okay? I've included, with this paper that I gave y'all, I included the states that do FS and PS, just for your edification. I've also included the Kentucky model by endorsement. That would be where a surveyor from out of state's already licensed, and he wants to go to Kentucky and he's passed his PS. They basically will give you their license. I also included their affidavit and explains exactly how they do that. I personally am a big proponent of it. Kentucky is the only one in NCAAS that currently does that. The last document that I attached for you is from North Carolina, and I want to speak to that in just a minute. Our licensing law basically paralleled North Carolina's as far as the pathways, the educational examination and experience requirements for each one of the pathways. Licensure all across the United States is being challenged in every form or fashion. It's not just surveying; it's in all boards, and I'm sure all the boards that Glenn deals with that there's challenges there as well. May not be in Tennessee today, maybe in other states, but it's out there. It's out there, and NCAAS has a large program to monitor that and to work with the states if there are challenges to things that they deal with. Okay. In North Carolina, they had a challenge to their licensing law. And the end result, just very briefly, is they had to make modifications to their experience. They had to speak to how experience is really truly determined, and all this is in there. And they added an additional pathway. And one of the reasons I bring this up, it's on the heels of earlier conversation from Mr. Cleveland with TAPS. He mentioned something of this very thing, and I think that is pertinent to provide this board with this information so that they can get a feel for what is going on. The one thing that I found very interesting was they have a pathway that's called high school diploma or equivalent and apprenticeship. And that apprenticeship is primarily the CST program, Certified Technician program, that National Society of Professional Surveyors put out. Y'all are very familiar with that, through levels 1 through 4. And they have a method of where an individual gets through those levels. It gives them a certain amount of credit towards their application process and so forth. So basically, in a nutshell, that's the things that I wanted to reach out and talk to you about. Please don't infer that I think that the board is doing anything wrong. I'm just trying to give the board maybe a little bit different perspective to look at the law that you have and how you implement it, and if in fact it may be some type of impediment. Don't know that it is, but obviously, I didn't hear Glenn, and I may have dozed off. I didn't hear you say the number of surveyors we have. It's usually around 1,100, somewhere in that vicinity. If you think about it, I'm going to give you my numbers, and I'm going to hush. In the state of Tennessee, we have, I think he said 1,121. Okay, he said 1,121 licensed surveyors. Now, this is Tim's analysis of that. You have about 400 and some odd surveyors that are out-of-state licensees that have a Tennessee license that are part of that number. Now, my numbers are not going to be exact, okay? He probably could tell me exact, but for talking purposes. So now we're down to, let's say, 700, okay? Of that last 700, you've probably got, I'm going to say, another 300 and some odd that work for engineering companies, I think like both you gentlemen do, work for TDOT, et cetera, okay? So now you're down to a whopping approximate 400 land surveyors that are in private practice like myself and Mr. Dillahay, okay? So when you look at the state of Tennessee and the population, we have a little more than 8 million people in the state of Tennessee. So we have about 400 private practice surveyors servicing 8 million public. Now, obviously, those are women and children and so forth and so on, but I mean, that's basically the numbers. That's the numbers that you kind of need to look at, and that tells us how small that we are in number in relative to the big picture. And this is very consistent from state to state. When you look at NCAAS publications, you'll find that NCAAS says there's approximately 50,000 licensed land surveyors in the United States and in their territories. But you have to realize, I think, Jay, you're licensed, 7 states? I'm licensed in 5. Well, Jay's on there 7 times, I'm on there 5 times. So 50,000 becomes really a not very realistic number. So I just want to leave you with those numbers, and I want to thank you very much for your time and your service forward from all of you, and I appreciate all of y'all as well. Thank you.
It sounds like there's a buzz in that regard already, and of course, and then Mr. Lingerfeld is adding to that scholarship. We had some of that discussion in our last meeting. TAPS was looking at some of that, and they were primarily looking at experience accruing post or prior to the FS, and that was memorialized in our minutes. And then Jay was talking about working with TAPS at some point, and then was talking about decoupling the PS exam too. And there was some discussion about the Kentucky model then. So it sounds like there's some grassroots coalescing here, and where there's rule changes, obviously we welcome we welcome that where the board identifies those, but the experience accruing prior to the FS, that would be a statutory change. And TAPS is running with that. So it sounds like from our brief that we got in the professional society reports that they're working on a red line of sorts, and I suspect that they'll present that to their representatives, and then our duty will be to enforce whatever comes out of that, And so we'll see what that does. But sounds like we're all on the same page.
Just to clarify, you're absolutely right. There does seem to be somewhat of a grassroots movement amongst TAPS, and I say that as a member of TAPS attending a local chapter meeting 2-3 weeks ago, and that was one of the topics that was brought up and discussed amongst the other surveyors there. I can say kind of the general consensus coming out of the 10 or dozen of us that were there that it was very positive, very positive. So I think that's a good start, I think.
I think we're ready then to move on to the legal section, unless you wanted to take that recess now, or we can do that afterwards. It's 11 o'clock. I mean, yeah, the legal report could be a little long, so maybe that recess now. What do you think?
Okay, we'll go 10 minutes then.
All right. Well, we are recessed in, if you don't mind pausing that. All right. We'll pick up where we left off, and that was the legal section. Before we get into the legal report, let me just pivot over to Stuart there. Stuart, did you have anything that you wanted to, I just want to be respectful of your presence and time. Did you have anything you wanted to add before we get into the legal report, or anything that you had to cover? Okay. Erica, then, it looks like we're good to go.
We have sort of a lengthy report today compared to other meetings, so please bear with me. Number 1 is 2023-030-341. Complainant purchased land that had been previously surveyed by respondent. When complainant closed on the land in December 2020, the survey listed 153.89 acres. Complainant alleges several discrepancies within the survey, including references to points that did not actually exist where the survey said they did. Complainant further alleges they found a survey for a property adjacent to his that did not line up with respondent's survey. Complainant communicated these discrepancies with respondent, and it was determined that the survey needed to be corrected. Respondent and his crew came back out to the property and submitted a revised survey that listed 140.86 acres, but still had discrepancies based on errors that complainant said they could allegedly physically see on the property. So respondent submitted a third corrected survey in June of 2021, which listed 149.63 acres. That was the final version. Complainant submitted this survey to the local county property assessor, where it was filed with the title and deed being updated. Complainant takes issue with the fact the TN property viewer has not been updated, and he blames respondent's survey. Complainant does not believe respondent is fit to be a licensed surveyor and alleges respondent has provided inaccurate and incomplete survey information to the extent that it cannot be used or trusted. Respondent explains that they were hired by the realtor selling the property at issue. Respondent detailed the steps in his response that they took when surveying the property, went into great detail, and explained the property was very steep, While respondent was out on the property, they met complainant and his wife. In notes, complainant informed him of how knowledgeable they were concerning land surveying. The complainant was. Respondent alleges complainant went around the property and pulled up control points, which cost respondent an extra full day's work. Respondent's crew had to set up close to where they believe the control points had been set when they went back out to the property because complainant continued to pull up the control points. Complainant, of course, has denied this. Respondent blames this for the errors in acreage. Respondent had to resurvey parts of the property and eventually corrected the legal description in the plat and paid for the deed of correction to be made. Respondent also provided a letter from the realtor that hired him regarding complainant's attitude and reactions regarding the survey of the property throughout the course of this matter. The realtor stated they walked the entire property, which had never been surveyed before, with the original owner of the property, and explains it was a very strenuous and difficult terrain that took almost 4 hours to walk the property line. They used a GPS while they were making this walk of the property line and gave the information to respondent to at least give them somewhere to start. The realtor, again, just emphasizes how difficult complainant was to work with and repeatedly behaved and took actions to show that they felt they were more knowledgeable about the land than the surveyor or the original owner. Allegedly, the complainant's own realtor agreed with this. So basically, respondent here does not understand why complainant would file a complaint 2 years later after the survey had been completed, when respondent feels they bent over backwards to make sure the survey was completed and revised to complainant's satisfaction. So I find no clear evidence of incompetence or negligence by respondent, just considering all of these facts, a lot of he said, she said in this situation. Complainant did provide a rebuttal, and there's just a lot of conflicting reports from the complainant and the respondent. But based on everything, I don't think that there's proof here that respondent was negligent, even though there were multiple revisions. And ultimately, I think the survey was revised to be correct. And considering respondent has been licensed for over 26 years without a single complaint or issue, my recommendation is dismissal.
Any thoughts?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Like who you're asking. Okay. I do agree 99% of what you just said there. Outstanding review, by the way. Obviously, this is what I would say a complicated issue with a difficult client, perhaps. In fact, it wasn't even his original client. I believe, if I understood, the realtor was the original client. Rather, this is just the individual that purchased the property of his survey. The only area that I had some kind of concern was when kind of early on here, maybe about third or fourth line down on the first paragraph, the complainant states the adjacent survey referenced several iron pins that had been placed, but were not mentioned on the respondent's survey. And then after that, apparently the acreage changes a couple of times here based on new information that comes in. I understand that. My concern is that was proper research done on the adjoining owners. As you research your property, you're also researching your adjoiners to make sure that the property lines line up. I kind of have concern there that perhaps adequate research was not performed. And then also with those not having been located, it only infers that the two mutual property lines did not agree, which would create something what we call gaps or gores, overlaps or holes, so to speak. And if there is gaps and gores involved, you're mandated to notify that adjoining owner that, hey, look, there's obviously an issue between our mutual property line. Now reference to that is not made in this report, but I'm just, from the evidence that's provided here, that's what I see happening. I could be wrong here, so. I'm going to ask the question. I think I know the answer already, but did this ever go to an expert review of any kind?
So it did actually go to an expert.
Oh, it did? Okay.
And what I got back from the expert was basically, and I don't think I'm even paraphrasing this, the respondent seems like they could have been incompetent because of the difference in acreage. And that was it. I had no reasoning. I had no explanation, and I didn't feel like that was something, if we had to take this to a hearing, I could prove was negligence. That's why I didn't include it, but I will tell you, yes, I did send it to an expert. They said nothing about what you mentioned about the adjacent property. I would hope that they would have mentioned it if,
I assume they're privy to much more than, I have this is what I have.
right. They got
Obviously,
they got all of the different surveys. I think some of the work product possibly, and the response, the detailed response, of course, the complaint, the rebuttal, everything that I had. So,
Can I ask why it wasn't addressed in here that an expert reviewer was brought in? I think it would only help whatever the verdict is that comes with this.
I guess I made a bad decision. I didn't feel like there was any information that backed up the claim that this was possible incompetence, and I didn't think that even if you agreed they were incompetent, I could use what we said in here, but I didn't think that I could use what the expert said because he gave me no basis for it. But
conversely, I think the fact that the expert review did not bring up any items of concern only enforces the recommendation of dismissal.
okay,
If he had brought
lesson
up
learned.
items A, B, C, D are of concern and it wasn't addressed here, we'd have a little conflict. But I think the fact that the expert review did not bring up items of concern only enforces the recommendation. I think it may support the case should this ever come back.
okay.
Just a suggestion.
Yeah, I definitely see that perspective, and I agree.
Any others?
Probably the thing that caught my eye the most here, and of course this could get lost in translation or something. Who knows what he meant when he was saying this? But respondent's crew had to set up close to where they believed the control point had been when they went back out because that means pretty close. I'm gonna call. It's a little scary. Like I said, I don't know exactly what that means without the technical review. But I assume he didn't find a problem there. So, like I said, this might just be the way it's stated. Sounds funny.
That is exactly what he said, just so you know. Like, I didn't paraphrase it. Like, my crew could, allegedly the control points were pulled up, so they had to go find where they thought they were. And that's where they set up. I mean, that's what he said. So, of course, from somebody who's not a land surveyor, I don't know if that's bad or not.
He could have added a phrase that he set another point near where he thought the other one was, would have clarified that. He's kind of left that a little open.
Like, I'm thinking they found a hole in the ground and said this is probably where the control point was, so we're going to use it. That would explain a lot of variance in acreage.
I will give credit where it's due. I do think that the respondent did absolutely correspond back and try to appease the client from X number of years. Well, not even his client, but the now property owner from years ago. There's no mention in here that there was additional compensation for the extra effort, and that's not our business. But he certainly did. I will give him credit that based on what's reported here, he did go the extra effort to try and resolve the situation. Always if your client or someone finds a mistake of some sort or some discrepancy on your survey, you want to know about it. You want to fix it as quick as you can. Apologies, all that, and get the record straight. And obviously this complainant sure did that. He certainly came back. It looks like 2, 3, 4 times, and now here 2 years later, now filing a complaint.
Right.
Wow, a lot going on there, and I do appreciate that. He's been licensed for over 26 years, et cetera, et cetera. I get all that. But had I not known that there was an expert review, I probably would say otherwise. I think probably with the expert review having been done, not coming back with any items of concern, I feel much better in agreeing with your recommendation for dismissal. Had I not learned of that, I probably would have been after something a little more than that.
Right. Or we could have sent it out. We could have said, let's hold this.
And that's where I was going.
But I just want to make sure I haven't confused you all. I want to make it really clear that the expert's conclusion was this seems like incompetence because of such a drastic difference in acreage. That was it. The word seems like. And there was no other details. So I just want to make sure I explain that correctly so you can make your educated decision.
I think you've got a pretty good presentation here. It's but like you say, sometimes the expert investigator may not state it in a terminology that leads you to the next question,
right,
to ask on that. So that no faults there. I think I kind of shared yeah, the idea that it took 3 shots to come up with an acreage is a little concerning onto it. Although I do agree that it would have been nice if he had, we don't have any real information about what lengths he went to get the adjacent owners' surveys or talk with them, but that is certainly part of what the surveyor ought to be doing. And most of us have probably been to this situation where we've come up with a result that someone disagreed with, and once we got together, it was because they had a piece of data that we did not find, and then the proper thing to do is to correct our survey based on this new evidence. I'd have to commend him for going through this much trouble in a bad situation with someone not very easy to work with to actually get something done correctly. I hate to just totally not mention back to him that he probably was, incompetence too strong of a word here. This is more he made a mistake in his evidence gathering and missed something.
Yeah, I mean, and I struggled with this one. So I think if the board feels like, because you are all experts, of course, if you feel like based on all this information, a letter of warning might be appropriate, that was something that I thought might be appropriate, but I did feel like we needed to talk through it.
Between that and the lack of information about his new points and all that this might be worth just a letter of warning that, we don't think you're incompetent, but you may have missed a few things on this one, and please be sure that you're not doing that as a normal matter of the way that you do surveys.
Yeah.
I do want to mention, I was just looking at the response again, and I think I want to include another sentence that was in their response because I think it might help with what we were discussing. It's kind of somewhere else in the response, and it might be why I didn't put it together with the control point issue. But he stated, I triangulated on several known points to reestablish a new control point. I had my crew resurvey the parts that they had surveyed before. Does that help?
That helps a lot.
That's a much better
I
answer.
apologize.
Yeah.
I'm still learning.
I understand. Well, it is a different terminology. And so I say that sometimes they may not say in a way that would lead you to the next question, but that's a much different statement right there.
And that may have resolved your dilemma in itself. But if you were to choose a letter to the individual, letter of warning for a new member, and of course, legal correct me if I'm wrong, is disciplinary action. Letter of instruction is not. So just keep that in mind too.
So letter of instruction is not disciplinary. Actually, that's more of what my choice would be. Is I think this is more of a letter of instruction that we think you did everything you need to do to correct something that you recognize a mistake and you did what you need to correct it. Please be aware that do your research a little bit.
You just need that in the form of a motion if that's the case.
Right now, I'm just throwing it as a discussion between the two.
I tend to agree with that now that I read through it. The fact that the surveyor had to go back an additional time and then a third time to make corrections upon the corrections on top does give me a little bit of concern that makes me feel a little bit better with the letter of instruction as opposed to a full dismissal. So I certainly would I feel comfortable with that, and I'll put that in the form of a motion.
Yeah, I can get on board with that. Oh, you did move? Second.
Is that how you want it worded, or
The letter of instruction.
Yeah.
it worded better?
I mean, as much detail as you can give me, the better. So
I would look towards, performing proper research of adjoining properties is really the one red flag that stands out to me. That's probably where I would hang the hat on right there.
okay.
I think that's a good motion.
We've got a
Motion
motion.
and
from-
Motion. We have
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, number 2, 2023-035-821. Complainant states they hired respondent to perform a survey and agreed to the terms and price. Complainant then entered their address and parcel numbers for the tract to be surveyed into respondent's data system. Complainant alleges respondent surveyed the wrong tract. Complainant feels an additional charge of $400 to survey the correct tract is bad business, and they feel taken advantage of because they had a time-sensitive situation with a pending closing on the property to be surveyed. Respondent states that complainant went through a process where they are first emailed a quote with a link from the Tennessee Property Viewer, or KGIS, to the corresponding property, which a client must confirm is the correct property. Once a client is on the schedule, a courtesy notification is sent out, which would allow the client to make changes and verify the job is correct before it begins. Respondent states complainant initially provided a physical address to the, quote, wrong property, and the link that was sent to them used this address, which complainant confirmed. The link also states, quote, click here to ensure that we are quoting the correct property, end quote. After the survey was completed, complainant emailed respondent to inform him that they had surveyed the wrong property. Respondent did charge for the additional work to go back and survey the correct tract, but put complainant ahead of all of their other jobs to get it completed as fast as possible. Respondent feels they have done all they can do to reduce the risk of miscommunications by implementing this process where there's a link sent, they have to confirm it, and then a reminder to allow for, any final changes. It does appear that complainant entered the correct address and parcel number into the data system. I have a screenshot of it. But it also appears that respondent surveyed the correct address the first time. The issue arises with the parcel numbers. Like, for instance, there was an 85.05 in the address, and they were supposed to do an 85.06 within that address. So to me, based on the screenshots that I saw and the fact that they have to confirm it in a link, I feel like this is just a miscommunication that doesn't rise to the level of a violation by respondent. So my recommendation is dismissal.
Thoughts or comments?
I agree with the recommendation from staff. It's not a surveying issue, it's a communication issue.
The system needs work.
Yeah, I hope that this could be, helpful for them to make some possible changes if needed.
Motion?
Motion to dismiss.
Second.
Favors? Aye.
Aye.
Number 3, 2023043371. Complainant alleges a survey completed by respondent was incorrect as to its location, which resulted in property being transferred. The complaint includes correspondence from TDEC as it relates to stream alterations, imagery of a certain portion of the stream, conveyances to property owners, 2 boundary surveys, parcel data, and affidavits attesting the stream alterations and the location of a certain property stake. Respondent has prior history with complainant and had previously been hired to flag some common property lines with 3 different owners. Complainant told the respondent that an involved creek had moved at some point in the past. Respondent did not find evidence of that claim except where a culvert had been removed somewhere on the upper end away from the property boundary. An adjoining landowner hired the respondent to survey her property shortly after having a survey done by a different surveyor. Respondent came up with a significantly different boundary solution and reached out to the other surveyor. Respondent claims that the surveyor admitted his survey was incorrect. The property owner would then receive a refund and he would remove his set corners. Unfortunately, that surveyor has since passed away. Respondent believes his solution fits the intention of the deed, and this complaint is based on a property dispute that will likely end up in court. So an expert review was conducted. Although lacking a few technical items, respondent's survey has a reasonable location, which seems to reflect the original intent of the conveyance. It is worth noting that he did depict the other surveyor's lines on his work and went the extra distance in reaching out to the other surveyor to discuss the differences in location. However, the expert found some technical violations, 3 of them. First, let's see, per one of our rules, 0.05 and 0.075, GPS surveys require the land surveyor to use the current GPS standards as set by the board. Respondent survey does not include the required GPS information as called for in Rule 0.11. The second technical violation, respondent survey contains the following note. This plat is subject to any and all rights of way, easements, and or restrictions that may exist written or unwritten. Because the record document specifically calls out a right of way across the subject property, a note specifically calling out this easement would have been appropriate. And then the third technical violation is under .07B7. Respondent's survey does not include a ratio of precision or relative positional accuracy of the unadjusted survey. Council recommends issuing a letter of warning spelling out the technical errors in the survey as dictated by the expert review.
Discussion on that.
The three violations that are listed here from the technical review of it, I don't see any of them are really, drastic. It wouldn't have changed the results of the survey any, things like that. I agree that something needs to be issued here. I think I'm probably a little more comfortable with the letter of instruction, addressing these three particular items. I don't consider them to be major violations. So that's kind of where I was kind of trending towards. I'll let the others speak to the same matter.
Yeah, I've had the exact same thought. The most egregious of them looks to me to be left off the right of way that's reflected. But like you said, you got the job done. Did a very good job in tracing down the issues with the prior survey and getting that resolved. So I would instruction covers it.
I don't see anything wrong with what he's done. In fact, that he actually responded and chased the other surveyor down, compared that. But he does have, I think a letter of instruction would be appropriate, just remind him that, these are a few things here that he should be doing that he's left off. I know we still have folks who are confused about the GPS standards and what they're supposed to do, but that they still have to do it. Motion?
Second.
In favors? Aye.
I'm going to move number 4 to the end just because I recommend some discussion. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. So we'll skip over number 4 and go to number 5, 2023-044-311. Complainant owns adjoining properties and wanted to do a lot line adjustment. Complainant was told they needed it, quote, turnkey by the Planning Commission. Complainant was confused because they had already had it surveyed. Complainant was directed to the county office to get a plat map because it would have been recorded. Complainant could not find a plat map and reached out to respondent, who had allegedly completed the survey and a plat map in 2009. Complainant and respondent corresponded a few times, but complainant claims respondent eventually stopped communicating. Respondent states that they do not remember talking to complainant based on they get a copy of this complaint with their name and summary. So based on what that respondent saw, they didn't remember this person, and they state they've been very busy. Complainant then told me that they had used a different name when communicating with respondent. So that made sense that respondent wouldn't know who they were. Respondent did find a file that may have been related to the 5-acre parcel at issue here, but states that it looks different than the tax maps. That was his direct statement. Respondent states they do not generally take maps through the recording process. So I don't see anything in our rules or statutes that state that you have to do that, but so I'm assuming that that's okay. And so based on that, I don't see any violations here, not to mention this was a survey done 14 years ago. So I recommend dismissal.
I would agree with the recommendation from staff.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything there that's, this looks like a complete miscommunication somewhere, and that has nothing to do with what we do.
Agreed.
Yeah. Have a motion to
Move to dismiss.
First time.
fourth back.
Moved it.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
The contentious discussion we had there. I hope y'all can still be friends afterward.
Okay.
Okay. Number 6, 2023-05371. Complainant alleges respondent established a boundary survey with insufficient information and did not contact adjacent owners. Complainant alleges other surveyors have been hired who have confirmed insufficient information exists to support respondent's work. Complainant provided a copy of a letter they sent to their neighbor. provided that to me, where they expressed respondent survey boundaries did not conform to where their family had always been told they existed. Complainant asks their neighbor if they could meet to come to a resolution on this boundary, and asked if respondent could be involved and hopefully offer additional information to help clarify the survey results. So since this complaint was filed, respondent has confirmed they contacted complainant, and the neighbor who he completed that survey for, they've all agreed to meet at the property. They have a date in mind and a time, and they're all eager to resolve the property dispute, which seems that's all this is here, is a boundary dispute. So my recommendation is dismissal.
Motion or discussion?
Quick question on it. If we make a motion on this and take action on this particular dismissal, it seems like they've agreed to all come together and resolve it amongst themselves, which is great, but they haven't resolved it yet, which means, if one owner goes, well, that's not what I thought, and they could still kick it back and say, well, what about, such violations, if there were any? If we take action on it here today, does that completely wipe the slate clean and they can't come back should something come up in the future?
I don't see why we couldn't reopen it if we
could
got
they file another complaint
further
later
information, or we could just start it as a new complaint.
Okay.
Glenn, do you have any?
Yeah, you could do it conditional. I mean, I've seen where this is our decision based on these conditions, and then if they don't meet those conditions or it's contingent, then we escalate to whatever, or we can represent.
I don't know how to put that in the form of a motion.
Say
What he said.
based on the current information and conditions, we move for dismissal.
If anything new were to be presented to the board, then we can reopen this matter.
That's my motion.
That's the motion. Yeah.
Second.
All in favor? Say
Aye.
aye. Okay.
All right, number 7, 2023-052-391. Complainant alleges respondent and their surveying company trespassed onto their land. Complainant's property is near the property that was being surveyed, and they admit to having a pending court case regarding an easement and boundary issue with the owner of the land that is being surveyed. Complainant states the part of their farm that was allegedly trespassed on is managed for hunting purposes and is posted. Complainant alleges the surveyors compromised the game and stomped on the grass and thickets. Complainant alleges respondent has a bad attitude and lied about notifying both attorneys involved in the pending court case. Complainant further alleges respondent must notify both landowners of a survey when litigation is involved, but does not provide the law citation or any further information to support this allegation. Respondent states the survey was being conducted for the purpose of locating a road and easement at issue in the pending court case. Respondent surveyors informed complainant that they were there to locate the road for the pending court case when complainant approached them on the property. Respondent explained to complainant that TCA 62-18-124 allows professional surveyors and their personnel to go onto the lands of others when necessary to perform surveys for reasons including locating easements. Respondent stated they did notify their client's attorney about the survey and encounters with complainant. Respondent feels complainant is trying to impede in the survey work to prevent and or delay the court case that was set for November 1st. So I find no evidence of any violations and recommend dismissal.
Seems like the issue at hand was the notification and going on to adjoiners' properties and the performance of a survey. It looks like he covered his bases when he says that he did notify through the client's attorney, and then also looks like while on site came across the complainant themselves and notified them there and educated him as well to the TCA. So I don't think there's any meat on that bone there. I'd move to dismiss.
Second.
All in favor? Say
Aye.
aye.
And so we're going to go back to number 4. This is our last one. 2023-049-441. Complainant alleges respondent provided a business card to another person who then showed it to complainant. Complainant alleges this third party, as well as another unnamed person, said respondent had identified himself as a land surveyor. The business card lists a company name, which incorporates land surveying in the title. So, for instance, Bates Land Surveying. That's just an example of to help you understand, although keeping it anonymous. So incorporates that in its title and in the email address, and the respondent's name is above the words owner's surveyor. However, there are no words referring to being licensed or a license number on the business card. Respondent states they are a subcontracted land surveyor in Tennessee, and that's the respondent's words. Respondent confirms they are not licensed, and they've stated they've never claimed to be licensed. Respondent further argues the business card does not show that they claim to be licensed or insured. Respondent states they are subcontracted through several local licensed land surveyors, and the respondent did provide the names and license numbers of those to me, and they are licensed here in Tennessee. There's 3 of them that I guess they subcontract for. Respondent states they have never done any work for complainant, and complainant didn't allege that, and therefore has no work product to show in relation to these allegations of unlicensed activity, because we always ask for that when there's a complaint involving surveying. Respondent does note that complainant's husband is a licensed land surveyor. So I thought we could discuss this if you would like. I do feel like the business card does kind of represent that they are possibly a land surveyor, or that they are claiming to be one. Of course, I don't have any allegations of actual land surveying, but our statute's very clear that you cannot pretend to offer land surveying services, and I think that was intentional, that our wording is so clear. So I guess I would like to kind of discuss how serious we would like to take this, or if we want to provide for some sort of warning and give this person a chance to stop doing this, or if we want to discipline them.
This is very similar to one we discussed the last time, except to me it's even more pointed, as he's saying. I think you're correct that we do very specifically say you can't say that you're a land surveyor on your business card.
Yeah, we even use the word card.
You don't get to say I'm not a licensed land surveyor on your business card.
Right.
I don't know. You can be a contract party chief, and particularly these days when we're dealing with 1099 employees and things, and folks bringing people in, you still come down to who is actually in responsible charge of it and be covered. But I can't myself get around the fact that he says land surveyor on his business card.
It's one thing, like the field guys that work for me, if you ask them what they do for a living, he goes, I'm a surveyor. It's all great. I get it. That's one thing. But when you go to the next step of business cards, et cetera, and I'll even expand into that as into letterhead or even email, where you put your name and phone number at the bottom, whatever they call that thing at the very bottom, your signature line, basically, and I'm not saying that's what he's done here, but it's along the same lines. You're advertising that you are, by saying land surveying and owner/surveyor. To me, that crosses the line. That is an offering of, or presentation, or an implication that you are licensed and able to provide that professional service. And it appears that that is not the case here. So I take this full on as similar to prior cases we've had before of advertising professional services that you're not licensed for.
Yeah, the fact that somebody got his card that he wasn't working for, he's advertising himself as a land surveyor. I'll go so far as saying he's deceptively advertised himself as a land surveyor, because he's not, and says that he's not.
If he had added somewhere on the card, not professionally licensed or something to that effect, I might think otherwise, but it doesn't say that that's there. So I tend to agree with the letter of warning on here.
Yeah, and it even goes beyond just the card. It's the name of the company. It says land survey.
Yeah, that bothered me.
That's a problem.
That's about as clear cut as you can get.
Yeah, that's a problem. I'm just curious, he's not a registrant. Can this board issue letters of warning to someone who's not a registrant? Things like that. I'm not trying to rabbit hole this or anything, but
I know that in our statute it says that it is the duty of this board to investigate and prosecute anybody that's unlicensed. So I feel like that's part of
letter of warning.
Whether we want to issue, any kind of discipline that is us prosecuting.
Yep.
So I feel like we do have the right to do that.
Yep. I would tend to agree with that recommendation from staff, and I'll put that in the form of a motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It wasn't as complex as you thought it might be.
That concludes the legal report.
Chair, we're ready for new business. I'll pause for a second for our members if there's any new business they would like to add, but there's something I'd like to throw in there, subsequent to whatever you may have, if there is anything.
You have no new business.
All right. The only thing I was going to add is actually I was going to cover in the education report. It really belongs there, but I was remiss and missed that opportunity. So we had a batch of expired courses come through recently. And when I say recent, like this past week, would the board grant administration to approve those without representing in another education report if they're within like 180 days, basically a expired grace period, where we just administratively take care of that if they attest that there's been no material changes, like they would on all their courses. That way, it's for sake of efficiency. That way, we're not holding them back for another 3 months to our next meeting, and waiting for to formalize those approvals when we're talking about within that 6-month frame, 180. And we have, some precedent of that sort in other. Of course, it's memorialized in statute or rule and other, programs. And if, I haven't done the research of our rules and laws yet because it was so recent. I mean, it was like this a few days ago. If the board would grant us administrative authority to approve those courses if there's no material changes, and keep in mind these are courses the board's already approved. It's not like these are new approvals. It's just to keep that pipeline moving.
Particularly with a time limit on it because you don't want to go forever. It could probably even be more than 6.
180 is reasonable. Yeah, 6 months is reasonable. I don't have an issue with that. Yeah, I'm comfortable with it.
Need that in the form of a motion, since that would be, formal action. If somebody could do that, that'd be great.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much. And I didn't have anything further.
I guess then we just have to determine how many credit hours this one.
We're getting straight up 12 o'clock. So 2
pages.
I would just need a motion that we're going to get a motion.
Second.
Approved.
Great. Here, you are free to adjourn if you so choose.
We stand adjourned.
Just a motion machine here.
Thank you, gentlemen.